that was a very, very tough period. But in hindsight, I think it was 100% correct. They removed the third and took us down to 2. I would rather be a happy 2 than a miserable 3. And by that, I mean exactly what I was talking about there, service-wise, where people come in and they have to hush. I think it's not just about the food. It really isn't. Most chefs get it, but some chefs still think that it's just about what they put on the plate, and it's not.
Really?
There are very, very few journalists that have my personal number. But
Oh, really? What's the what are they calling you about? AI?
It's an article that's coming out recently. They just needed a couple of more questions. The onslaught of Ozempic?
Oh, what, the fat loss thing?
Yeah. Is it affecting your business, and how? If it is, how? Are people leaving stuff on their plates?
That's mental.
I'd never thought of that, actually.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that as well. The AI thing is very interesting. I interviewed the guys at Fallow. Don't know if you've met. Yeah. I mean, they're geniuses.
They are.
And they were telling me all the AI software behind the scenes. And I was like, I've never seen and heard, or the way they use it to sort of have this kind of almost like spider tentacles into what's going on with the restaurant, and they can use it as training. So I think they were saying that a lot of customers say their chips are too salty, right? But they're like, that's the way we want to season it, and it's a stronger seasoning.
Yeah.
But they can use this, and this thing goes into Google reviews. It goes into customer, it's mad what it can do, and it just pulls this report, and they check it every single day.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, it is. It tentacles, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it can dig deeper than
we can. Yeah.
Like that.
Yes.
And you've got the information on your fingertips immediately.
How are you guys tracking it back in the day, when it was notes and... Yeah, because this is the thing. So the other day, I was speaking to my friend, and he was saying it is mental, how they made The Godfather without, pre-phones. So, how do you get that many people to one set? How do you get, say you're the Francis Ford Coppola, and you're like, okay, I need you to come here. How do you do that? Is it a tax? A fax. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's humans are much cleverer, if that's the right way of saying it, than we think, in terms of all those old school movies was done completely analog, and it's It's mad how we sort of take it for granted.
So now you take it for granted, exactly that. I mean, you're lost somewhere, or you're walking somewhere, and you just get your phone out and you find out exactly where you are and how to get to point B.
Yeah.
Or you can pick up the phone, take it out of your pocket and call a taxi. It's just, how did we do it before? Or your mates.
Yeah.
You would meet in a pub.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd say, okay, let's meet at 5 o'clock in the pub, and everybody turned up at 5 o'clock at the pub.
Yeah.
You didn't sort of message or this, that, and the other, and it was.
It's crazy.
How did we run our lives before?
Yeah. How would you have done it back in the day? Did you have some sort of? Because I've read your old man's book, which is brilliant. I absolutely loved it. It's just we'll get into today more the business side, because that completely blew my mind.
It's a journal.
It's a journal, yeah.
Just keep a journal.
But so you kept a journal. Okay, interesting. Very, very interesting. We're all good to roll. Well, thank you for doing this. Absolute honour, absolute privilege, incredibly excited. What I'd absolutely love to start with is read your father's book, which is astonishing, and I absolutely loved it. And it just unearthed things that I wasn't necessarily aware of and privy to, and it was just brilliant. I can't wait to explore that with you today. But there was a quote in there by Steve Doherty, who was, I think it was the head chef or exec chef.
Head chef.
Chef.
First English head chef of Le Gavroche.
Amazing. And he says, I would compare Albert to the great composers, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms. No idea who Brahms is, but anyway. There is something in there, something inside those people that made them what they were. And Albert had that gift without a shadow of a doubt. I'd love to know what that gift was, and that only you could understand by being his son.
I think what Steve, and Steve's nickname, by the way, is Bulldog.
Right.
He was a bulldog in the kitchen.
How so?
Well, he would give me that sort of gruff, really barking orders out, but a great chef, absolutely, and a dear friend now. I mean, Steve's wonderful, a true legend of Gavroche.
Sure.
But I think what he meant from that was that my father could get the best out of everybody. So whether you were, let's say, not so talented, but you had that will and that want to learn, but he would take you under his wing, and he would nurture you, and he would get the very, very best that you were capable of doing. And you know, I believe, and he believed that everyone's got a particular talent, has got something there.
Yeah.
So you need to find that talent. So, you know, some chefs might be particularly good at cooking fish, but absolute shit at cooking meat. And it does happen. It really does.
Why is that? Like, why would you? But why would someone be so good at fish and meat? And I'm going to ask some 3-year-old questions as well.
Yeah.
Like, why? Surely it's kind of.
You would think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Like.
But when we're talking about 3 Michelin star level,
Sure, okay.
the finesse and the touch and the skills set that's required, some are particularly good at that, and they're shit at that.
Right.
So finding that and then encouraging them to flourish on the fish section, for example. So he was very, very good at that. He was good at nurturing. He was good at getting the best out of everybody, and he was incredibly honest as well. If somebody was just a good chef, good cook, or front of house it could be as well, a good waiter, but not to the level required for 3 Michelin stars, he would sit them down and say, you know what? You're good. You're a good chef, but you're not going to make it at this level. Don't be disappointed. Let's find somewhere where you can flourish, where you can be happy at work, and that your boss can be happy with you. Because it's not working here. And you have to have sometimes those real sort of hard conversations. And he was definitely not afraid to do that. But he wouldn't just throw people out on a limb or just say, you know, you're just not good enough, you know, off you go.
Yeah.
He would take care of that person and make sure that they went to a place where they would flourish.
When you say in terms of just that not level of good enough, like what was he looking for in terms of to be at that level, that at Le Gavroche level? Like what were the things he was militant on in terms of his expectations of people?
Gosh, where do I start? I mean, we're talking, you know, 3 Michelin star level, so it's perfection on every plate, on every movement, on everything that you do. But it's also as well. Your personal appearance, how you work, the respect for the ingredient as well, the respect for your co-workers. So it's not just about the cooking; it's everything.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is like in terms of more of the kind of the character traits, because you could apply this to any business. Like, it's more kind of
100%.
The less the cookery, more the kind of how he expects you to show up. Because I think how you show up is really important in anything. It sets the tone for everything, and also. If you show up badly, it can be or someone shows up badly, it can be like cancerous and just spread through the organisation. So I think you want everyone to be kind of, but like what would he look for, you know, specifically?
It's difficult to tell. I mean, it's just, you know, can you tell a great chef just by looking at them work or their appearance? I kind of think you can. And that's it's difficult to describe, and it's difficult to pinpoint. I mean, if I take my example, and you know, my father's traits have rubbed off on me, I suppose, or his good traits, shall I say? I hope. I mean, I remember when I first started MasterChef Professionals, and some of the cameramen and the team, the crew there, would say, "Oh, I like the look of this one. I think they'll go far." And I'd say, nah, no chance, absolutely no chance. They'd say, but you've only just seen the person walk in. Said, yeah, no chance, they're not going to make it. And they'd say, but how do you know? You know, why? What? And I'd say, well, just to look at them walk in and their attitude, not even attitude, it's just their The way it's so difficult to describe.
I think there's something beautiful in this. It's like I really believe like how you do one thing is how you do everything, and like I really believe that. And it's like if how you show up, it kind of has this sort of knock-on effect. But I agree, it's hard to sort of pinpoint.
It really is difficult
what it
to
is.
describe because I mean I've been in the business so long, and I think it's almost it is second nature to me. But I mean even the shoes they were wearing, the way they would pick up their knife. The way they would pick up a saucepan, a frying pan, the steak, if it was a steak that they were asked to cook. There's a certain way that a professional chef that's going to make it at the highest level will do all of those things.
I was going to bring this in later, but let's bring this in now, is obviously the sort of the alumni who worked at Le Gavroche, Marcus Wareing, Gordon Ramsay. There's a whole, like,
the list is endless.
The list is endless. I actually want to talk about some of the underrated chefs as well, because I think there's loads that have done amazing things that weren't necessarily, have built that sort of empire. But maybe we can go through like, Gordon, Marco, and Marcus Wareing, and like, I would like to ask, like, who was probably the least naturally talented out of those three, and like, how did they have to work to get,
Wow.
to where they are,
I normally get asked who was the most talented.
I love people who aren't naturally talented and who have to work super hard and like do more work than other people. And there's a whole thing of like what you practice in private is what you're praised for in public. And I love people. And in fact, I interviewed, Jun from, interviewed him last week. And he was saying he worked under, oh my God, was it? He went from the Gavroche to Nico's place, and
yes, he did. Yeah.
And basically, because it was, I said, I didn't really understand the rivalry, right? I was like a Spurs player going to Arsenal, right? He was like, that's a great way of putting it. And he was saying they were trying to do like a Rochelle, but like with almost like an espresso spoon.
Yes.
And he couldn't do it, and they were always giving him a bit of ag, like, who's this new kid coming? You've come from our competitor, like, get fucking on with it, sort of thing. And he was like, well, that night, I went home every day in bed and was just practice. Yeah. What you practice in private, you're praised for in public. Yes. But yeah, out of those three, Marco, Marcus and Gordon, like, who was probably, the least, or maybe another chef was least naturally talented and had to really work hard?
That's a really, really tough question because those three, I would say, are up there in the top 10 best chefs that have ever walked through Gavroche's kitchens, and they were all three of them, Gordon, Marco, and Marcus. You mentioned are all very naturally gifted chefs, incredibly gifted, but that doesn't mean that they didn't have to work hard at technique. Technique is key to success, and I believe in muscle memory in cooking, and you could almost do some tasks with your eyes shut, and those three chefs could certainly do it. Out of the three, I would say possibly Marcus had to work on his technique the most, but I don't mean that in a bad way, quite on the contrary, because if you think of any chefs or in any trade, actually, that you have to work doubly hard to succeed and doubly hard to do that little rocher or, quenelle or whatever, then maybe you deserve more praise than the others.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm the person who because I was never really good at anything at school, so I've always had to try and work hard. So I love those sort of underdog stories of people who are like, who put in that extra bit. What would you say the similarities and differences are between those three in terms of let's sort of look through the naturally gifted sort of angle through that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose they're the most three high-profile chefs that have gone on to great things. Monica Galetti as well. They're probably the four highest-profile ones that have come through the doors of Le Gavroche and gone on to to big success. But then there are so many others. It's. Le Gavroche, when you think it opened up in 1967 and closed last year, during that time, thousands of chefs have come through, And some, like, we mentioned Gordon, Marco, Monica, etc., have gone on to do huge things. But there are so many more.
Yeah, let's talk about that then, because I don't think I've ever heard you speak about some of those other ones, and maybe that could be a better lens to explore, like the ones who had to, I think you said your father would be able to spot something in someone. Yeah. Who's the one that like had that little special something, that twinkle in their eye, that may not get the same praise as those other three, or the the illustrious list, but like, and what have they done? What's their imprint been on this wonderful industry?
Yeah, I mean, if you take. Very often they are shy, in as much as Marco and Gordon are not.
Right. Okay.
The total opposite.
Yeah.
So introverts, shy, just wanting to get on with what they love doing, and therefore they very often don't get all that sort of. But they're no. They're not a lesser chef. I mean, it's in many respects. I mean, people like that have gone on to do great things, as in maybe running a 5-star luxury resort in Bali, of which there is two chefs and one front of house that keep in contact with me that worked in the 80s and 90s, and they send Christmas cards or messages and say, hi chef, hope everything's well. I still remember my 2 years at Gavroche fondly, and if it wasn't for those 2 years, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. They probably have as much merit as the Gordon Ramsays of this world, but they've just ploughed their own road, as it were, and have done great things in their life. But their stint at Le Gavroche meant so much to them. And that's, that is something that's Le Gavroche's legacy.
Yeah.
And it's one that will always live, I think, because of the trickle-down effect. Because those people, the ones that have gone through Le Gavroche's finishing school, as it were, will then train other people as well.
Yeah.
And then, train on and on and on. It's really funny, actually. What was I watching this morning as I was driving in? Watching a video on Instagram, scrolling through, and there was an old documentary clip of Gordon Ramsay. I think it may have been Boiling Point. Do you remember the?
Yes, I've watched that. Yeah.
Yeah. When he was really, it was in Royal Hospital Road. He was trying to get that 3rd star, and he was dressing on the pass a beautiful piece of braised turbot in red wine, with little leeks, etc., around it. And I saw the plate. I went, bloody hell, where did you learn that one from, Gordon? Of course, it was at Gavroche. He was on the fish section, and that was one of my signature dishes. And I never realised, and it just dawned on me, cheeky bugger. Yeah. And it wasn't even it wasn't even his interpretation of it. It was
bang on the same thing.
Hang on, mate.
Because how old were you? Like, do you describe how old were you when they walked through the kitchen doors? Like, describe, because I think it's interesting, and I love what you've said there, Michel, about like how you can be shy and still forge your own path. And I don't think you need. I know it's more revered to do all the big stuff, but you can actually absolutely still do that and enjoy what you're doing. But then I like these sort of cantankerous characters who are So yeah, describe, like, were you running it then when he walked through the doors, or what was the situation? Yeah. And describe that first day, like how did he have this aura about him?
Yeah, so when Marco was in the kitchen, I was just filling in as a pastry chef. I say when he was at Le Gavroche, because he was before that. Marco was working at Gavroche. So Gavroche was the original Gavroche in Lower Sloane Street.
Yeah.
And then when Gavroche moved to Upper Brook Street in '81, my father and uncle kept the premises in Lower Sloane Street and named it Gavroche. So Marco was there, working there. It was a classic kind of French brasserie. There was bouillabaisse on the menu and things like that. It was just a beautiful, good, hearty French brasserie, for want of another word. And then he got transferred to Le Gavroche. And as I said, I was then filling in for the pastry chef, and Marco was Marco, 100% full on. And the only person that could really keep him in control was Dad.
How would your dad keep him in control?
He would have to sit him down before service and after service. But
go into that, swim into that a little bit more, because I think that's really interesting in terms of like a managerial and leadership thing.
Yeah.
Because almost like you sometimes need these players who are kind of a bit, as I say, a bit off the wall or hard to tame, but there's a certain genius in them, so you need to learn how to manage that. And there'll be a lot of people listening to this who have that person in their team. But so before service, what would he say to him? Is there an example where he was like, where it got a bit, combative or whatever?
Oh, God, yeah. Well, it was very, very fiery. I mean, Marco was a very fiery character, as was Gordon. But the old man was on the pass in those days, so that would have been in the early 80s. And he would literally grab Marco by the scruff of the neck if he was being too much of a cantankerous, I think is a good word, character. But slamming the fridge doors and throwing pans on and just getting really, really psyched up for service. He would sit him down and just say, Marco, just calm down, for fuck's sake. Come on. There's no need for this. There's no need. You've got the talent.
Why was that aggression important, though, do you think? Or why do you think aggression was so important in kitchens back then?
Well, Mark, I'm not saying that Marco was aggressive, and I'm not saying that there was aggression in the kitchen, but he was just a fiery character.
Right, with you.
In general. And it just wasn't conducive, and wasn't conducive to achieve greatness and shouty kitchens. And we've moved on, thankfully, a lot from that in hospitality. There's still some work to be done, and don't get me wrong. And there are still some dinosaurs out there that run their kitchens like that. But shouty, aggressive kitchens are not conducive to find, to the best food. I don't think so. Mm-hmm. But then he would sit him down after service as well, and he would go around. And actually, Dad was like that with all the stuff. He would go around and hug everybody at the end of service.
Yeah.
One minute the old man would be shouting at you saying, "Get that fucking thing on the pass," or "Why the hell have you done this?" and "Get your finger out," and this and that, and really, really put the pressure on. At the end of service, he'd come around and give you a hug and a kiss.
Yeah, that's a subtle art of, because I think there's a line in the book where it says Albert was a glutton for punishment, and I absolutely. But what they say in the book is like how he would always, no matter how big the rollicking, there'd be a hug. As was it Silvano?
Yeah,
we'll talk about like the front of house. They'd basically be at each other the whole time, and then just at the end have
glass of champagne.
Yeah, that's the other thing in the book is what again I didn't realise is before Le Gavroche and everything you did, there was a massive kind of discrepancy between the kitchen and the front of house.
Oh God, yeah.
And I think the way your father describes it is almost, it needs to be an orchestra, it needs to be a symphony, it needs to kind of be this one kind of organism. Like, how did he get that to work? And like, what is the art of getting those two things to work? So I think it is, you can feel it when you go into a great restaurant, the dance of it just happening, but also it's more stark and sort of rifling when you're in a restaurant where it's not working,
100%. There has to be total trust between the front of house and the kitchen team, and they have to work as one in unison. And those years, I mean, back in the dark ages, as it were, it was us and them, and it really was a fight. Who could screw one over the other?
Wow.
And it would be front of house and back of house. We don't mix. They didn't even used to go out together at the end of the night. It was no. You're front of house. We don't go out with you lot. We only go out with the chefs and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I don't know when and how it changed, but it certainly changed for the better. That now a well-run restaurant will be just one team.
Yes.
And I distinctly remember my dad instilled when we had apprentices working at the Gavroche, so kitchen apprentices, they would have to do a certain amount of time front of house. So they would work in the room to understand how their food is served, what the front of house, their responsibilities are, and how they can make our lives as chefs easier, better. And then we would also have occasionally some of the front of house team work in the kitchen for a few weeks. So, that was very, very forward thinking.
Yeah,
That was back in the late 70s and early 80s. Already he realised that this has got to stop. We can't be fighting each other.
So what would, in terms of the customer, how that would impact the customer experience? Again, it was like, I'm trying to almost like imagine we're doing this conversation in 1969, 1969, or 1967. Like, how would that impact the experience for the customer? Because obviously, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
well, first off, knowledge. So understanding what goes into a dish, and then secondly, a chef working in the dining room will soon understand that it's not just about bringing a plate and putting it in front of the guest. It's also about timing, getting everything ready. You don't clear until everybody's finished, and just little things like that.
Yeah.
There's loads more, and vice versa. So when the waiter comes in and works in the kitchen, it's not just slap a steak on a pan and put it on a plate. There's a lot more that goes into it, all the preparation, making sure the plates are nice and clean and hot and so on and so forth. So it's all of that. I'll tell you just a tiny little anecdote, actually, of the dark ages. We had a maitre d' assistant manager.
a little bit closer to that.
Sorry, I'm leaning back.
That's all good.
It's my back. I've got a bad back. I'm going to keep it moving. Just a little anecdote. We had a maitre d', bless him, was a lovely, lovely man, Tony Battistella, and he wasn't an employee. He was more part of the family.
Right.
He started work actually in 1967, so he was with us on day one.
Wow.
And followed us through and was maitre d', as I said, or assistant manager at the Gavroche for many years. And I remember he was old school, very, very old school. And when Gordon was working at Le Gavroche, so this would have been in the mid to late 80s, he was on the fish section, and I don't know how it flared up or what happened, but he had a go at Tony, and there were a few words said at the beginning of service. You effing this, that, and the other, and Tony just looked at him from the other side of the pass and says, "I'm going to get you, son. I'm going to get you." And he had a table of 8. We had a table of 8 booked that night, all a la carte, so they could choose whatever they wanted. Mm-hmm. Every single starter was fish section, and every single main course was fish section. So Tony came back with this check, and it was all written by hand in those days, plonked it on the pass, and I called it out, and he looked at Gordon as if to say, "Fuck you, sunshine."
That is so good.
And Gordon was fuming.
So he's basically gone over and he's sort of hammed up the
Yeah, oh God, yeah, absolutely.
You've got to get fish.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Absolutely. So I think Gordon learnt his lesson there. But those moments you realise that actually, you know what, we shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be working together.
Yes.
It's not a question of us and them, front of house, kitchen. For the good of the guest, we should be working together.
Yeah.
And the good of the whole team as well. It's teamwork. It's not about individuals, which I think comes back to that original question as well. It's
How did you? Sorry. I was just going to say, how did you? When you've got these big, egos, and not necessarily, as you say, it could be Tony, it could be Silvano in the front of house.
Yeah.
It's not just in the kitchen. How did you, as a leader, Michel, manage that and keep the symphony dancing in the kitchen, really, to begin with, and then we can sort of move into the dining room?
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. Excuse me. It really isn't easy. And I suppose it's the difference between being a chef and a cook. Not all cooks can be chefs. Chefing is being in control of a brigade. We call it a brigade, don't we? And it's a kitchen team.
Sure.
And getting the best out of everybody, and making sure that team works in unison. So it's management, and it really is a shame because, we're not taught management skills. A lot of chefs, and that's why I think that we hear about flare-ups in kitchens, about angry chefs, because it's lack of management skills.
Yeah.
And that's not taught, sadly, or very little of it is taught. So, a good cook, to make that leap to becoming a manager, because that's what chefs do, they're managing a kitchen. They might still be cooking, but they have to manage that kitchen. It's tough. It's very, very difficult.
What have you? Because that's the other thing in your book, and obviously in part on you, is just how much your dad read business books and the Gavroche board meetings, which we'll get onto. Infamous. Yeah. But yeah, what would you say are some of the 1 to 2, 3 like core principles you've learned about managing brigades? Because I think it's an art and I'm hopeless because I've got a little team who help me run this podcast, but like my mind is so scatty that I'll just, like for example with Jun the other day, right? So we spend about 2 hours setting everything up and it's facing the window. And then last minute I say to Rich and the other guy we've got with us, I'm like, okay, it's going to start in 45 minutes, but let's just change the whole thing and do it this way. And it's like fucking hell.
We've just spent all this time getting it ready.
And then all of Jin's team were like looking at us like, what the fuck's going on? But anyway, so that's I've got a lot of sort of, faults because I'd say things too quickly and I overshare. So I'm asking, a lot of these questions are selfish, right? But you've managed some serious cantankerous characters. Like, what would you say are the 1 to 3 principles of kind of great management?
Well, I think in my kitchens over the years, I've always had the extremely talented chefs there, but also the less talented. And you need everything. I think you need a bit of everything, because the ones that are hyper talented and are really, really at the top of their game, you will keep them in control and nurture, well, not nurture them, but keep them in control. And you don't really have to work too hard to get the best out of them, but you have to work very hard to manage their egos very often.
How do you manage their egos?
Gosh. Again, it's down to individuality. Some of them will need constant attention, constant praise, constant affection and constant recognition, and others less so. Others will just need a pat on the back on the way out and say well done. It's understanding each individual person, and that is key. And then you do need the ones that are just what we would call workhorses, that you give them a task and they will do it.
Yeah.
And they will repeat it and they will repeat it and they will get on with it and it will be done to perfection.
Could you use the big ego chefs or the naturally gifted to bring up how would you use or utilize, I should say, the big naturally gifted megalomaniacs, if you could call them, with the workhorses? Could you get them to help each other?
Absolutely.
How would you sort of galvanize the ego to get them to bring up the workhorses?
Yeah, absolutely, because you need that balance.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's the true, it's in most businesses you need a balance. So out of a team of 15 or so chefs that we had at Le Gavroche, then you would split it up. You would make sure that the egos and maybe not working together, they are split up and they are they would be in charge of their little section with hardworking, soldiers, as it were, the infantrymen.
Yes, yeah. That's fascinating. And on the case-by-case ego point, because I think that's beautiful. Like it is, every human being is different, so they need kind of different treatment. Is there an example of how the nuance and the sort of the tact and the guile of how you'd kind of pamper those egos with any of the chefs, any of the ones you've worked with, or I should say led?
It's very difficult to pull out one particular example like this out of the blue. I'd have to start writing my book, memoirs. But the amount of time that I spent in the kitchens, nurturing, talking to the staff, and getting the best out of them, it's very, very difficult for me to sort of pinpoint things, because it's almost like second nature for me.
Yeah.
But it's understanding each person's character, and that takes time. 15, 16 in the kitchen, sometimes pre-COVID it was even more, and then the front of house as well, because let's not forget front of house. Yeah. And getting to know them, getting to know their skills, getting to understand their limitations, and then understanding them as a person. So where they're from, their family, what they do, their hobbies, etc. Just little conversations, little snippets, so that I can get inside of their head, and then use that as a tool is the wrong word, but as a way to connect and a way to make me, or to bring me down, not down, that's wrong again, to bring me to their level, or to their so that they see me as an equal.
Yeah. Well, I think it is connection. It's but on a human level, not like a we're in this.
Not as a boss.
Yes.
Ultimately, yes, I was the boss.
Yes.
And Dad was the same. Ultimately, yes, he's the boss.
Yeah.
But he had a way of bringing himself down to everybody's level, so that everybody would feel that they could go and talk to him as a person. And hopefully that's the way my team at Gavroche felt it. Well, I'm pretty sure they did, because they used to bend my ear all the time. Oh, my boyfriend has left me, or oh, my girlfriend is this, or oh, by the way, chef, my mum's coming over. Can I have a day off? So, they would talk to me, and people would talk to Dad and Uncle all the time. And I think that's really, really important. It's key, I think. And it's key, I think, to running a good business, but it's also key to creating a great atmosphere that the guests then will feel. I personally know that when I go into a restaurant, I can tell within minutes if it's a place that is happy. Yeah. Whether it's a good working environment, you can. It's like an aura. It's something in there. You walk into the place, and within minutes, you know if this place is shouty, if the manager's a bastard, if the if the staff are working under pressure, that they're not happy. You can tell. You really, really can tell. But if it's a joyous place, if the staff are happy, if the management team are really getting the best out of everybody and treating everybody well, you can feel it as a guest. It's intangible, but you know it's there. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, so one of my favourite restaurants at the minute is Fallow. Like, I've been there quite a few times, and I went with my mum, and she was absolutely like in seventh heaven. They're bringing out the sort of espresso martinis, and they've got a guy there, and he's a genius. So he's a guy called Lockie, who's this Australian guy he was actually in a band called the Overtones, like this Aussie. I think it's like Aussie Westlife is what I've seen. He's this beautifully sort of camp, elaborate kind of storyteller, and he walks around with a headband. And I was speaking to Will, and he was like, the guy doesn't even need a job. Like, I think he's done really well out of the overtones or undertones, whatever it is, but he just loves hospitality. Yeah. And he'd come in and he'd sit down, so your eye level when you're with someone. Like, my mum, as the food was coming, was like, "What's that?" And he's Australian. He's like, "You don't need dare say that. I'm going to tell you what it is, right?" And it's just, but he's like, he had this sort of sass about him. I was like, "This is genius." But so I had that experience, and then I spoke to Will and Jack. I was like, how do you create that? Well, it's like, look, we create, whether it's a small thing like buying the team a load of, the energy's low, so let's put up the house music, let's give out some tequila shots, let's, like, not to the team, but to the staff. But as you say, it is that symbiotic relationship between what's going on, sort of backstage versus front stage, which is the restaurant. I think it's endlessly fascinating. So on the management stuff, Michelle, so we've got I think so beautiful in terms of like how you manage the natural egos versus the workhorses, the understanding someone on a human level. So that's connection.
Key. I think that's key.
Really connection. Is there anything else on sort of the management or how to get a team together to create great work? Because I think.
Whoa. I mean, it is teamwork, and you've got to get that message across that we are working all together as a team. It's not starter section, garnish section, fish, pastry. No, you work as a team. So we used to try and rotate everybody. So you would work maybe only 4 months on one section, then rotate and move to another section, and I think that's really important too. And it was the same. In the front of house, you would rotate so that everybody would have a go at maybe doing the menial task, running and polishing, and everybody would have a shift at opening, so the opening shift or the late shift. So it was constantly. So you would appreciate then the good bits and the bad bits of, say, finishing off doing the late shift, and you would appreciate then the glory bits of maybe being working behind the bar. So all of that I think is really key. And so in the kitchen, for example, yes, you may not like working on garnish section because a lot of it is pretty menial and it might be peeling spuds of this, that, and the other. But it's got to be done, and it's got to be done in the right way. And you can't slack. And then if the kitchen porter doesn't turn up. Which could happen. I would be the first one to jump in and do my 10 minutes, 20 minutes of pot washing. So you lead by example. So if they see that, the team sees that, say, wow, the boss is actually rolling his sleeves up and doing some pot washing. We're not going to complain, we're going to bloody do it too. It's, I'm a great believer of leading by example.
Yes.
And I was fortunate that my first ever boss, when I was an apprentice in France, was exactly that. He was the first one in the morning, last one out at night. No task was too menial for him. If
this is when you're in the pastry,
yeah.
That was because you were like 16.
In Paris, 16.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, 16.
That's another thing. It's mad. Imagine sending a 16-year-old off now on their ones. It just seems.
Yeah.
Whereas that was probably so kind of not normal then, but like it's a big thing.
It certainly was in France. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I suppose nowadays you would go to college. Mind you, I went to college. 16. I was doing my apprenticeship, but it still meant that I had to go to college. So go to college 1 week per month, but 3 weeks at your employer. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think apprenticeships are fabulous. And I mean, it's slightly off-piste.
Yeah, go off-piste.
But I think that there was a stage that we were constantly pushing youngsters into further education. University was the thing.
What period was that? That was
Blair period, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
That university, we had to send our kids to university and further education, which I think is wrong. Fundamentally wrong. There are some people which are just not academic. I mean, I'm not an academic. At the age of 16, fortunately, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to work. And I wanted to use my hands, and I wanted to learn a craft, a skill. And I genuinely believe that a lot of youngsters at the age of 16 know exactly maybe not exactly, but have a really good idea of what they're good at and what they want to do. And
also, I think, like some of my mates now, like I'm 31, like I think there's a wonderful essay by a guy called Paul Graham, who basically created Y Combinator, which it was based in Soho actually, but they'd founded loads of these entrepreneurial businesses, so like Airbnb, Y Combinator, Dropbox, all these sort of Silicon Valley, but this big sort of fund. And he's got this essay being like, to find out what you actually want to do in life, and this is his numbers, right? He reckons out of the whole world, which is billions of people, he thinks there's about 500,000 to 600,000 people who like not only know, but when he says like, there's like saying you're passionate about like, I don't know, rugby, but I'm not going to be a fucking rugby player as much as I'd love to be, right? But to actually be one of those ones who actually know what they want to do and probably have the potential to do it. He says there's about 500,000 people in this essay, and he's got all the numbers to back it up. And so I think to your point, Michelle, of like, these 16-year-olds, if they know what they want to do, we should push them to what they want to do instead of sending them to like like, no offense, but like a substandard university where they're going to get a degree in, I don't know, you know, surfing and tourism. Like, nothing wrong with that, but that's not what they should do. And I think you're so right. If these people have this gift, we have to push them into their calling. But it's not easy as, I think you're right. We do just push people into this.
And then they're in debt.
Yeah.
And they come out with a degree in whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't guarantee them a job. And that's, you know, that's just wrong. I think it's really, really fundamentally wrong. And that's something that I think really must change. We've got to be able to figure out who or what kids are good at. I say kids, but 16. I even think maybe from the age of 14, you can tell whether you're a manual craft person as opposed to an academic. Let's say, just to put it in very, very simple terms. Sure. So why not get these kids, for want of another word, as I said, into some form of vocational training at that age? Carry on their studies, yes, of course, and you can go on to your A-levels, of course, yeah. But also have a vocational part of that to encourage them and help them and nurture them in a skill, in a manual skill that they could then get a job from. And not be in debt to the tune of 30,000, 50,000 pounds by the age of 22, 23, and not a full-time job. So, yeah, apprenticeships are really good. I think that's a start, but we need more help in our industry. I'm talking about hospitality with apprenticeships, financial help from the government and incentives. I know there are some out there, but it's not enough. And I think we need to relook at the curriculum as well, and the way we look after our this next generation, which is key, which is important, and not forgetting as well. We've just come out of COVID, and a lot of youngsters are still suffering from that because they were locked up for 2 years, and learning through a computer screen.
It's mental. It's crazy.
It's just terrible, and I think we forget that very often. That those 2 years of COVID lockdown has caused a lot of damage to this generation, this youngsters.
One thing I want to talk about is Silvano, because he was he was the head of front of house.
Yeah,
he was
absolutely.
the guy
And a company director.
What was his genius like? Because I think it is a real with cookery or cooking a dish, like you taste it and it's not okay. Everything it's subjective, but it's more objective than service. Because service is, you got a dish that's in your head that you want to create. You can see Gordon cooking it on boiling point. It's kind of like, I know that's going to taste pretty good. Service is kind of completely different. I almost think, I don't know, this is what I personally think, and I could be wrong, but it's like back to each person, back to each table. Like each table is like they're almost their own little sort of theatre, and you don't know, some could be in a good mood, they could be...
Oh, God, yeah.
Husband and wife could be having a massive Barney. The couple could be on a first date. Like the mood, even though it's one dining room, each table, the temperature of each table is very, very different.
Absolutely.
And I think there is a real supple art to understanding that. And I'd love to know how sort of Silvano, what was his genius in terms of kind of getting all the beauty of the kitchen and making it effortless and smooth.
Yeah. front of house and service is key, isn't it? And a lot of chefs don't understand that, and that they think it's all about the food.
Yeah.
It's not. It really isn't. And Silvano was a genius at that, being able to read the room, and exactly that. We had 23 tables, and there could be 23 different scenarios going on.
Yes.
And it could be 23 different backgrounds of each table. I mean, it could be royalty on one table sat next to the taxi driver that's been saving up money for the last 5 years to come for dinner. So it's being able to read the room, which makes a great front of house. And Silvano had an absolutely incredible memory. He could remember a person's face and where they sat the last time. He could remember what they had for dinner and who they were with, and incredible. I mean, a real gift.
Yeah.
I mean, he used to jot a few things down as well, using the old pencil and paper as well. But he was a genius at that. And even if he didn't remember exactly, he would be able to start the conversation, and then it would.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, incredible.
Yeah. And are there any, like, what would he how would he greet guests? Like, what would he do? Like,
yeah, so I mean, always with and this is key, eye contact. So, and you greet the guest before they even have a chance to see you almost, and it's about body language too, and how you.
Yeah, like how would he hold himself? Because I think again, there's loads of lessons.
Yeah,
like people listen to this for, they may be going into an investor meeting, right? There's people who have brands or businesses, and these lessons are very, the best the 3-star Michelin restaurants front of house. There's going to be loads of lessons that can be applied to sales
100%.
meetings, getting investment for your getting your kid off swimming lessons. Like these are human lessons, but I think we can take it from the restaurant and apply it. But how would he sit and how?
So it's confidence.
Yes.
You have to have confidence in yourself, and so the way you stand, the way you dress, and polished shoes. Gosh, the meetings before service, he'd line them all up, and beady-eyed. Shoes. So you'd look down and go, oh shit, and very often he'd say, look at your shoes. Now go and look at your boss's shoes, Chef Michel. Yeah, he might be in the kitchen, but his shoes are cleaner than yours. Yeah. And I was a stickler as well. I've always got polished shoes, but it's the way you present yourself. You've got to be proud of what you do, and if you're proud of what you do, then you stand up straight, you stand up tall, and you connect and you talk with confidence, and that immediately makes your guests at ease. You know that you're in a good place, and you're in a good hands, as it were. You're in a safe pair of hands.
Yes.
That's what Silvano instilled, I think, in his team, but very much like my first boss as well. I would have walked through brick wall for my first boss.
Who was your first boss?
Henri Elgouache, so where I did my.
I wish I could say it like that.
Henri Elgouache. Elgouache, great name, hailing from Brittany. But because we absolutely adored him, and as a team, we would have done anything for him because he was such a great leader and he understood us. And he understood every individual of that team, and he was the type of boss that you could go and knock on his office door and say, right, I need a chat, chef. Yeah.
What would you go and speak to him about sometimes, if you can remember?
Time off. Needed time off because parents were coming over, or time off because, I remember actually, because Gavroche got its 3rd star, so I needed time off to come over and celebrate with Dad and Mum. He was very understanding. So it's important as a boss that you shouldn't be, too detached, that you have to be available.
Yeah.
I mean, people ask me now, what do you miss of Le Gavroche? What? Because now it's shut. I'm kind of fast forwarding now, but
yeah. There's no chronological order to any of this.
Yeah, and you know, do I miss it, and etc. I don't really miss it, but there are some things that I do miss, and that's that connection with the team, and being, you know, that father figure, and just that little small talk with some of the team, and you know, how's your dad doing, you know, or how's things, you know, outside of work, or your football team's, you know, shit, and we have a bit of a banter, bit of a joke, but it's about that connection, and then also what I miss is seeing these youngsters coming into the kitchen, coming into the front of house. You know, they might be only teenagers, but they've got that look in their eye and that hunger. They want to do so well, and to see them achieving, you know, their dreams, and helping them on their way.
Who are some of the most exciting chefs you think in London right now? Like, who really sort of the youngsters who really sort of you're excited for?
Other than my daughter and my son-in-law?
Yeah.
Because they just got their first Michelin star, which is
amazing,
fantastic. Gosh, it wouldn't be fair for me to name one over the other, would it really? But what really I find great is that the food scene in the UK is so vibrant.
Yes.
It's wonderful. It really is great. And to see so much homegrown talent is just wonderful. And it's something that Dad and Uncle were always going on about, you know, inspiring that generation of British chefs. And, you know, I think they started that.
Well, I want, like, there's the 60s is such an interesting period. So it's like, you know, I actually looked at this because there's a thing you can do. Who was telling me about it? Rory Southern was telling me about it. When it's like, when you actually, the time periods going backwards feel like ages ago, but it's like actually from the Gavroche opening to the end of World War II was what, 15, 16 years? Wasn't that long. If you look, and the way you can sort of realise how short time is Google the tracks 15 years ago. So say it, and you're like, oh my God. So I think I did this exercise. I think the songs 15, 16 years ago to realise how it was 50 Cent in the club, which to me is like, that feels like yesterday. And it's like, fucking hell, like, do you realise how close that was to World War II?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it does seem like 15 years, but that's literally nothing. So, and then you've got like the Beatles. Beatles are my favourite band of all time. And I've read loads about them. I love the Lennon-McCartney, like, creative partnership. And I saw it was very analogous to your father and your uncles, because they were, I think it's the whole brown omelette versus white omelette thing, right? And it's it's like how you cook an omelette. But then you can literally trace, it's almost like a family tree, their genius, and was what we're talking about, these exciting chefs, all the way back, probably like a family tree almost. And I think the Beatles did that to music, really. Like,
they inspired so many new bands to...
But they were the first, the Beatles were the first to actually write their own songs. So before that, it wasn't, someone else would write the songs and then you'd sing it. So they're the first to do that. They basically inspired the Rolling Stones. Like I was listening to a podcast like this yesterday. The Rolling Stones were in so much, like, sort of had a huge imposter syndrome around the Beatles. If you look at some of the albums, they copied very much, and then they went on to do their own thing. The song, I don't know if do you like the Beatles much, or like...
Not a huge fan.
No, not a huge fan. but there's a song Helter Skelter, which basically they just did in 2 minutes. That created death metal, and you can like link it all back.
Wow.
But I think what they did with food is exactly the same thing. But in terms of the creative tension between the two, like, I think you said right at the beginning, Michelle, those were some of the good traits you picked up from your father. What are some of the good traits you picked up from that partnership, and what are some of the bad traits you think you've picked up?
Yeah. Well, hopefully, the good traits would be humility, staying humble as well, understanding, being fair, being honest. I think, honesty is very, very important. Honesty and appraisal as well. which I touched upon earlier. The old man certainly wasn't afraid to say when something was not right, but to say it in a certain way and not be vindictive about it, and to try and nurturing and helping the next generation. That is key. My father and uncle were great mentors, and that's something which I am passionate about as well, because I went through that. As I explained, as an apprentice and all the other places that I worked at, I was very fortunate. I had great mentors as well as my father and uncle. So I think for me it's important to recreate that and to carry that on. Yeah. And my cousin is the same as well. It's really, really important for us to carry that on. So hopefully they're the positive traits that I picked up from dad and uncle, and that and something from my mum, of course, because it takes two to make a child. Yeah, sure. And that's her unrelenting sort of energy. Although I'm kicking on now, I'm 65 and I've got a bad back, and I'm slowing down. Yes, apologies. I'm slowing down a bit, but Mum is incredible. She has got so much energy. She is the life and soul of a party at the age of 85, and she keeps on going. Oh, she is incredible. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. So hopefully I've picked up that kind of from my mum's side. She's also a very good cook as well, not a professional cook, but also very good home cook, and has an amazing palate and understanding of great food. Bad traits, Dad. Gosh, yeah, there were a few. Such as? Well, one of them being his love of women. He was notorious, and he wouldn't mind me saying that. He's probably looking down now and laughing his socks off, bless him. He was a womanizer, and he loved life to the full, which I don't know if that's a bad trait or a good trait. Well,
it comes with both, doesn't it? Yeah. Any form of gluttony has good things and bad things about it. I think it's just.
Oh, he was a glutton too, but he always, as in a food glutton, he loved his food. But he always said that it was because of the war, and because he was deprived of so many good things.
Yeah. Just for context, listen, because your father fought in the war, didn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
Because that's one thing I was going to ask you, teed me up, is how important do you think his time in the war was to Le Gavroche's success?
Well, Dad was and Uncle, very, very, headstrong, single-minded, and when they had an idea, they would go with it. Yeah. They sometimes argued a lot, actually, because they were different characters, but they both had a goal and they wanted to go for that, and that was open the restaurant, and then open a second, a third, a fourth, but that was their goal, and I think that generation that went through such hardship as the war, and as kids, they were foisted off, and as a lot of children were during the occupation in France, and they saw hardship, and they saw hardship as well growing up as kids, because my grandfather, on my father's side, was not the best, shall we say. He was also quite a womanizer, allegedly. I never met him, and used to drink a lot, and was not the nicest person. So they had quite a tough childhood. The war, an errant father, shall we say, and so it was tough. So that forged them. That forged the hardness in their characters. Yeah, and deprived of all the good things during the war as well. Yeah. So, they had very little butter, very little cream, which were just two of the items that my father absolutely adored and would pig out on. Sure. I mean, he could get through a slab of butter in one session. I mean, it was, phenomenal, the amount of dairy fats that he would eat. And he used to say, I don't care. I don't care. I didn't eat enough of when I was a kid, and I'm going to catch up now. And I remember the first 6 months when I was an apprentice in Paris, and I stayed on my grandmother's couch in her little flat in Paris. And there was a cupboard that I opened one day, and it was full of sugar, flour, and tinned food, but enough to last for probably a year.
Wow.
And I said to Grandma, what the hell is all this? And she said, Michel, you just never know when they may come back. And she would hoard. And a lot of that generation did hoard.
Not my memories is, but there was Nazi occupation, wasn't there?
Yes.
And your that's mad. Like, again, it feels so recent, it feels so far away, but also so recent. Do you know what I mean? And it's this weird, that kind of sort of the malleability of time, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's crazy. So it's interesting. So because almost his sort of lack of then made him a glutton for life. And
I believe so.
I love that. I really love that. Because then it's inspired. It's the same again with the music. It's like we were so repressed, and it's like you have the 60s, then the contraception pill comes in. Like there became a gluttonous appetite for life post all that deprivation. So that was one bad trait. Was there any other traits you've picked up? 'Cause I'm just thinking like my mum and dad. Like I'm way more like my mum, but like she's just probably I'm a bit all over the shop, right? Which is like my probably foible. But what other things did you pick up from your old man or your mum actually that you've had to work on?
Gosh. Well, Dad was a gambler. He loved gambling. My God.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And a gambler, as in he would love. He used to play cards. Used to play poker. There's occasions where he would have poker nights with fellow chefs. So we had to prepare some food for them and get the booze ready, and they would just have a poker school, and vast amount of cash would pass hands. And he would have an account. He had an account with various bookmakers, and he would study form. So he enjoyed a flutter, put it that way. But he was also a gambler in life. He loved to take risks and to take, that. But I suppose, and he also lived on credit. I mean, he, didn't have that much in the bank. In fact, he very little in the bank. And most of the businesses, including Gavroche, were in debt. And he lived on debt and he lived on credit. But, I suppose his philosophy was, I'm here, I'm living.
Yeah, but the thing I got from the book, if I was to boil it into one sentence, is like, fuck it, just go for it, in everything.
Yeah.
And so would you say you're more of a risk taker, than your old man, or how do you take risks? You're not. You're way more reserved.
In that respect, yes. I'm probably more like my uncle. My uncle was less of a risk taker, much more calculated, and maybe even a little bit tight.
That's what I was trying to get to, the Lennon-McCartney tension. Yeah.
So you'd have Dad that would just go for it. Come on, I've got to open another restaurant. We can borrow this amount of money. We can do this. It'll work. Don't worry. And Uncle go, well, look, hang on a minute. We're not making money here. We're losing money here. And you want to open another restaurant? They were constantly. They absolutely adored each other. I mean, they were almost inseparable. But God, they could argue and fight. And you put them in an empty room, and within minutes they'd be at each other's throats.
Really?
But they absolutely adored each other.
Is there an example of why they'd be doing that, or when that happened, or?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the omelette.
Yeah. So for listeners, so I think your old man was brown.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, sorry, the other way around.
Was it the other way around? Okay,
you've got me going there.
Yeah. So just tell that story.
So my uncle's perfect omelette. Would be with a nice bit of colour on top, so browned. Yeah. Dad's omelette, no, should never have colour.
The brown would be from the butter, or how?
And you need to colour the omelette a bit.
Sure.
And that's how Uncle said that should be the perfect omelette. Dad, no, it shouldn't be coloured. No colour at all. No caramelisation. But it should still both be baveuse and light and fluffy. And we had a restaurant.
Why was that? What was just...
God knows. Maybe it was just to be the opposite of the other. Just to piss each other off.
Okay, that's beautiful, yeah.
So we had a restaurant then called the Poulbeau in Sheepside in the city. And upstairs was a brasserie, and on the menu was omelettes, and there'd be an omelette of the day, and it was hugely popular. In fact, I ran the omelette section when I was 18, there were no non-stick pans then. It was just proper iron skillets, and it was great. And they would take it in turns to run this kitchen. So one week, Uncle Michel would be in charge, and he would pop in and make sure the omelettes were lovely and brown. And the next week, Dad would be in, and he would have a hissy fit if the omelettes were not, exactly how he wanted. So you can imagine the poor guys that were on the omelette section then were thinking, shit, which one of the two brothers are coming in today? Both omelettes were delicious.
What would you say is the best way to cook an omelette from...
I like a bit of colour on my omelette.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad.
Yeah, interesting. So how would you do it? You whisk your eggs and then...
Yeah, into a nice hot pan. And I don't fold the omelette until there is a little bit of colour on it.
Wow. Yeah. It's just interesting seeing how their relationship, because I think it's so crucial in how both and the Waterside Inn, like those two things created this, almost just this whole thing that sort of came down.
So both brothers were hugely passionate about mentorship, about their team, and about achieving perfection, in their restaurants. But they were chalk and cheese. They were totally different characters. And they can't get this point across more. They absolutely adored each other, and the brotherly love was just no words can describe it. However, as I said, they could fight incessantly, and they had so many completely different characters.
If your father was here today, like, what would you cook for him? What would you ask him? Is there anything you miss asking him?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, if people listening out there, speak to your parents. It's you've got to, because once they're gone, and you can no longer talk to them. It's so important. Yes, I would love to have him here and talk about fishing, talk about everything, life in general. And I do miss that. I didn't speak enough to my dad.
Really?
I didn't.
How come? Like, were you not in the same kitchen with him, or what was the?
Well, at work was work.
Right.
So that's slightly different. When you're away from work, then you can have a family conversation or an off-the-record conversation or things like that.
Yeah.
But at work, it's...
Did working with him before make it harder to have a father-son relationship, do you think?
I would say so, yes. And he would say so too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a very, very strong character, as was Uncle. But... yeah, I think it's so important to be able to talk to your parents. I mean, our family is far from perfect. I think my father and my uncle didn't speak to their eldest sister for years. And she was excommunicated. Oh, just family bullshit.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's all superfluous bullshit.
It is.
It's like... Now, a quick shout out to our wonderful sponsor, Square. If you're a restaurant or you're in the food game or you're thinking of diving in, hear me out. Because running a restaurant, it's not just about great ingredients. It's not just about great vibes. It's payments, staff, menus, online orders, and that's where Square comes in. Their tools are built to make all of that smoother, faster, and let's be honest, less of a headache. Square is the all-in-one restaurant tech system with almost everything you need for day-to-day service, designed to give business owners time back to focus on what really, really matters. With Square, you can manage your business from anywhere, all from one platform, which gives you access to your sales, your bookings, orders, staff management, inventory, and reports. Whether you're a leading fast-paced quick service restaurant or a full-service kitchen, Square lets you spend more time doing what you actually love. Square's purpose is economic empowerment, being the best digital partner through intuitive, beautifully designed tech so their sellers can create the best possible customer experience. Visit square.com to learn how they can help you take your business to the next level. How to get your challenger brand into more supermarkets and increase your current distribution in half the time. Range reviews are happening right now, right this millisecond. Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Tesco, Ocado, Co-op, all looking for new banging challenger brands. Don't miss this range review and have to wait another 6 months. It's long. Don't lose precious shelf space to your competitors. Don't let your buyer pick another brand just because you didn't have a Grand Slam deck. Northstar Category Management help you create banging supermarket pitch decks so good that buyers find it impossible to say no to. Challenger brands like Perfect 10, Trip, Bulb & Co, Dash, all love Northstar. Look, I am so confident in Northstar transforming your brand. We've got an exclusive Hungry offer. Your first month for free. Yes, free. Plus, we're going to give you a free 30-minute consultancy session to see how your brand is currently performing in category. Click the link in the show notes to book your consultancy session and thank me later.
I just hate it, for God's sake, put that aside and just pick up the phone and speak to each other. I think it can't be that bad. My father and uncle were classic examples. They would be at each other's throats, but they would still talk to each other and they would still hug and kiss and adore each other.
Yeah.
So no, life's too short. You've got to be able to talk to your family and yeah, I miss him. What would I cook him? Probably tripe. It was the last thing I cooked for him before he passed away.
Oh, really?
It was at the end of COVID, and I think the restrictions had just lifted, he loved tripe. In fact, we all love offal in the family, and so I nipped down to Brixton Market because it's one of the only places few places in London where you can buy just a kilo of tripe. I didn't want to buy a full 20 kilo from Smithfield Market, so a kilo of tripe and a bit of cow foot, as they call it there, or cow heel, and then braised it down in a lovely tomato and onion sauce with some white wine and herbs, and just put it in a little Tupperware dish, kept some for me, obviously, and then went to see him in his flat, and he was more or less bedridden then, but said hello to him, and he said, "Come here, give me a hug." I said, "Dad, we're not allowed to hug too much, it's still COVID." He says, "Well, fuck COVID." Anyway, look, I've brought you something to eat. I've cooked something for you. What is it? And so I opened up the Tupperware, and he went, "Tripe."
Wow.
Yes, got you some braised tripe. And his dog, absolutely, Canelu, just smelt it too. And
Yeah, beautiful, yeah.
So that was the last thing that I cooked for Dad. And
what was the last thing he said to you?
Gosh, well, sadly he passed away in hospital, and it was just after Christmas. It was just after New Year, and I got a call from Maria, his wife, saying it's really looking very, very bad. He is in palliative care, but I think it was 1st or 2nd of January, she called me, and it was, pointless me trying to drive back from the south of France in a day just to see Dad. I may not have even been able to see him because we were then back into restrictions. So I phoned his mobile phone and was no answer. So I phoned the hospital. Maria gave me a phone number of the hospital saying, hopefully they'll put you through. I spoke to a lovely guy, I don't know who he was, and he sounded really stressed, as a lot of staff were at the NHS at that time. And I'll never forget, he said, "Look, I'm not really allowed to do this, but I'll put you through."
Yeah.
And he put me through to Dad.
Wow.
So I had a lovely conversation with him.
Do you remember what he was saying on that conversation?
He was a little bit delirious, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Probably drugged up to the eyeballs. I said I loved him.
Yeah.
Said, he was in a good place. Asked him if he was being looked after. And he said, yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't much of a conversation because he was really on his last few breaths. But I'll never forget that, and should never say anything bad about the NHS. Those people worked through hell.
Yes.
And they helped.
I can't stand it when people slag off the NHS. They are the actual. I know there's the whole. They're superheroes.
Superheroes.
They really are superheroes.
Superheroes, and that nurse or whoever he was.
But I love what you said there, Michel, about the whole. Sometimes it's just having a conversation with your parents about nothing.
Yeah.
And that's all it has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's mad how many people kind of create a void to not have that. It's just fucking pointless because it's going to go like that,
It is, and I mean, it's just wrong. Life's too short.
When all the stuff about his legacy and Gavroche came out, like almost posthumously, like was there anything that kind of shocked you about his impact? Because sometimes when someone's around, you can't really appreciate it until it's gone. Does that make sense?
I mean, even now, and he's been gone a few years. Even now, I bump into people in the trade or that worked in the trade, and they tell me stories about my father and how he influenced them. And it's I'm still now learning about his impact, which is wonderful. It's very, very heartwarming. Very heartwarming. I mean, as I walked in, and it was before you were recording, we were talking about M&S, Marks and Spencer's.
Yeah.
And
well, that's the other thing is I didn't realise how much that you could almost do a business book on this of like how, because the sous vide thing was, he was years, like 40 years ahead before everyone else, and then it didn't work out. He did a load of stuff for M&S. What was he doing for Yeah, maybe let's go into the bounties of sort of business now. Real risk taker, real entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
I think you write in the end. It's like he was as much an entrepreneur as he was as a chef. Maybe potentially even more so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, there's loads there. So I think what was he doing for M&S? He was doing
So this was back in the early 80s. And M&S.
Sorry, was M&S like was it the as sort of high regard as it is now back then? Like the premium supermarket.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yes and no. They were only just starting really their food offer, and they wanted to really be the best food offer out there.
Sure.
So what did they do? They went to come and see the best, which was Albert and Michel Roux. I mean, I remember working at the Gavroche in the 80s, and there was always people from Marks and Spencer's in the Gavroche kitchen. And that they were there for work experience and to see how 3 Michelin star food was made, and to be inspired and to then take that experience on and that inspiration on into their food offer. And Dad would organise trips to Ramsay, the market in Paris, and various other eateries or whatever, all over France, with the Marks and Spencer catering or food team, as it were, to help them. And he helped also with some of the recipes and such like. So it was pioneering. It really was pioneering.
Because that was what sort of recipes were they? Was that for their sort of their ready meal range? Was that?
I don't know what it was called then, but it was. I mean, things like the slice of smoked salmon rolled with smoked trout mousse inside, like a papillote. It was. I mean, when you look back on it, it was pretty basic, but it was a huge leap for supermarkets or that style of what was being offered.
Yeah,
it was incredible because I mean back then there really wasn't that much. I mean we're talking 70s, 80s. Food and supermarket was, let's say, Fray Bentos maybe, and that kind of stuff. The frozen aisle ready meal.
Yeah, it is mad how supermarkets have evolved so much. So what would you say some of his business principles were then? Because as you say, he was sort of this rambunctious, like let's go, like gear 6 permanently or gear 7 permanently.
Absolutely, let's go for it. Go.
So sort of risk-taking's one. Any other sort of more sort of nuanced or subtle principles he would have about business, do you think? About running a successful business?
Yeah, so understanding your business fully was key.
When you say fully...
Well, everything. From the amount of washing up liquid that you use, all the way up to what brand of champagne you're serving, if that makes sense.
Total sense.
And everything in between.
Yep.
And it's really, really interesting that when we closed down Le Gavroche, we had to go through loads and loads, tons and tons of paperwork and books and such like. And I stumbled across a couple of ledgers and also some...
What I asked, like, what ledgers are like?
Bookkeeping.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Money coming in, money coming out, basically. Yeah. Of the late 60s and early 70s, and also board meeting minutes, which were incredible. Absolutely incredible, because they're all taken by hand, all written by hand.
Yeah.
And some of the minutes were exactly that. Why are we buying washing up liquid at X amount of pennies a pint? Because it was all old pennies and old
pennies a pint. Yeah.
Or gallon, I should say.
Yeah.
When such and such a brand is less. That was board meeting stuff. Bless you. That was board meeting. Really? But yes, because you look after the pennies, and
Yeah. The champagne. Yeah.
So those board meeting minutes were incredible reading.
Really?
He would dig down into the finer detail and find out why this business was not as profitable as it should be. And there was all the head counts and how much wages and this, that, and the other, and the average spends. And it was all handwritten. So the average spend of the lunch menu and the average spend on wines, and if we could tweak this offer to maybe get a little bit more out of our guests and value for money, they're just brilliant reading. I should actually publish them, I think, because
that's what there is what I sort of took. There's a business book in there somewhere. I was so kind of, not that I didn't expect it, but when someone's so known for the food and the sort of hospitality and gastronomy, you kind of not forget about it, but like you just don't. It's not centre stage.
Yeah, exactly. And you'd think a board meeting, you would talk mainly finance.
Yeah.
You would talk about your food profit margin, say, your gross profit, and you would talk about your budget, your planning for future, but it's mostly finance. But he would dig deep. He would dig straight, right down into the nitty-gritty of what could be done to alter the path of the profitability of your business.
Really? Would you sit in on these meetings when there was that sort of crossover period?
These particular board meeting minutes were.
No, I know pre your time, but was there a period when you were running?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, like describe how you'd set up a board meeting again, because this is applicable to all the businesses in London, right? Every business has a board meeting, and I love excellence, and I'd love to know how you guys ran them. Specifically, like who was in the room, what time did you do them? Like all these things matter. Like trying to do a board meeting for me, or when I was sat in for doing in the afternoon would be hell on earth. Because I'm just tired. I'm not doing that. I can't. My brain can't do numbers in the afternoon. I can't. Like it's just. I have to meet my accountant. His name's actually Storm, which is kind of hilarious for an accountant. But I have to meet him in the morning because otherwise I'm like, mate, I'm like a 2-year-old come the afternoon. So there's no point in doing.
You're a morning person.
Yes, exactly.
I tend to be more of a morning person too.
But yeah, so how would you guys do them?
It was usually afternoon. It was after the lunch service,
I'd be out of there.
Yeah, and there'd be champagne, and you think, really?
That's amazing. There'd be champagne. That's brilliant.
How can I think straight over a glass of champagne? But you would think that a small independent restaurant like the Gavroche and small independent business wouldn't need these highbrow board meetings. And to be honest, I think they probably didn't. But I still think it's important to have these meetings, whether they're board meetings or management meetings. And that applies to any business, whether you are, whether you've got only a handful of employers or shareholders. Whether you have only a handful of shareholders or you're responsible for a multi-million-pound, sort of with hundreds of shareholders. I think it is important to have those meetings, even just management meetings, regular updates where you sit around a table and you go through numbers and you go through the ins and outs of how to make the business better. And it's
what are some of those things that you think, looking at other businesses that most people don't think about, like when it could be like, this could make your business more profitable or better? Like,
well, if you're just going in, doing your job and nothing else, it's as if you're wearing blinkers. It's a bit like saying, well, we've done this for 20 years, that's the way we do it. That is just wrong. So if you come out of that environment, sit down with whoever else is in there.
Wow, okay.
You then remove the blinkers, you look at figures and you look at your daily business in a different light and you talk about it. And you might say, look, I don't know, I've heard about the supplier of XYZ apparently is really doing good business, or this, that, the other. Or I think it's just...
It's almost like being able to see a business from 1 feet to 10,000 feet. That sort of...
You see it in a different light.
Space is, yes.
Yeah, but you have to be taken out of it.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, and you've got to be very strict about it. I hate meetings that go on forever. I always like business, any kind of meeting, business meetings or whatever. That you've got a set time.
Yeah.
Don't linger too long on any particular subject. Let's talk about it. Let's knock it on the head and move on. So you can set rules. Mm-hmm. And management meetings, no more than 20 minutes. Boom, let's get it done. We've got a short agenda. Let's hit those points, talk about it, and then action it. And that's key as well. So it's all very good talking about it. You've got to action it. Yeah. So you have a follow-up meeting. It's like management meetings, maybe once a month. And you go, how did that go? Did that work? Did it not work? And then if the answer is, oh, we didn't implement it, why the fuck no? It's...
You said, did we need a meeting of that gravitas? Probably not. You said that. Like, why was your dad and your uncle so staunchly for it? Like, what was, why? And then I suppose the second question to that is like, how instrumental was it to sort of I think one of the themes today is how you show up and like polishing your fucking shoes and just, like how did it add to sort of the gravitas of the restaurant?
I think, well, it's that trickle down, isn't it?
Sure.
If the business is run properly from the top, and you lead by example, then the rest of the team will follow or aspire to become that, want to climb up that ladder. So I think it's that in part. And I mean, as I said it earlier on, it's leading by example as well, isn't it? If you're serious and you take your job seriously and you run the business seriously, then everyone will want to emulate that and understand that that they're in a place that is serious and wants to do well.
No, it's just, I love sort of just this sort of brilliant basics. And I think a lot of things is brilliant basics. Let's talk about, I know Pub in the Park's coming up. One of my fascinations, I listened to you talk about the podcast, was sort of almost the evolution of restaurants, like the dinner jacket rule.
Yes.
Which is like how, I mean, we can go there as well, but I'd love to know in terms of Pub in the Park and like, just, I love pubs. Like I love, Osh from the Devonshire's been on quite a few times. He's brilliant.
A few swear words there.
Yeah. That was where it was like bouncing off each other like no end.
He's an amazing guy, isn't he?
Yeah, brilliant. But I think the sort of pubs are kind of, who said it? Is it? I think Tom Parker Bowles said pubs are the secular church, which I kind of, in some respects, do agree with. Like, it's a hub, and it's a very British thing, or UK thing. Pubs, but I'd love to know sort of the birth of gastropubs for you, like what your thoughts are on that, how when they came around, and then I would love to know some of your favourite pubs as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true what you've just said. I mean, they are social hubs. They are not just drinking holes. Places that
social
get
hubs.
Smashed.
Yeah,
they are social hubs, and you know a good pub as soon as you walk into one.
Yeah,
you can feel it. It's like a good restaurant as well. I said that earlier. You can feel it. They've got an aura. And a good pub, you should be able to go in there on your own, stand at the bar, and within 10 minutes, you've had 2 or 3 conversations. You've had a chat with the bar person behind. You've had a chat with the local who's just come in with his dog, and you feel part of the place.
Yeah,
that is the sign of a good pub. So it's not just about good beer. Nowadays, good grub. It's.
What are some of your favourite pubs?
Oh gosh, I'm not a huge pub person after saying all of that.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate a good pub. I live in South London, so the one on the Common is lovely. It's the Windmill. It's just a lovely pub. And they do good grub. And summertime there, it's just wonderful. You're on the Common. It's literally on the Common. And they've got a huge beer garden. You can sit outside with a nice pint or a nice cold drink. It just feels nice. And actually the Windmill feels very much part of the Clapham community as well, because there are so many locals that flock there.
Yeah.
But that's just one that I pop in for a pint, but it's.
What pubs do really good food, do you think?
Well,
what's some ones that you really...
I suppose you've got the Devonshire.
Yeah.
And it is still a pub. And it's serving good food. It's not, I don't think it's pretentious or anything like that. And they do a mean Guinness, don't they?
Yes.
But then, I run a pub called the Wigmore, which is part of the Langham in London. And the idea behind the Wigmore was just that, was to make it accessible for the locals and to make it have that local feel, but serve some exceptionally good food. But recognisable pub food. So there's a Scotch egg, there's a toasty, legendary cheese toasty, good beer, and served in the right way, and not expensive. So all of that is key, and we've got loads of locals that go there that will just pop in for a quick pint. It's
funny. I was speaking to a bloke I interviewed the other week about. There's a lot of people saying he was Australian. He was sort of saying there's sort of difference in a lot of people say people in the UK are sort of miserable, walk around, but there's a kind of that common thing.
Well, an Aussie would say that.
Yeah, no, we were sort of debating it. I was like, what do you think? And I was like, well, everyone's saying this. If you go on a fucking tube, of course people are miserable. They're on their way to work, and it's probably cold. And people are not going to speak to each other, right? But if you put them in a pub, like our secular church, as you so rightly say, Michelle, it's like within 3 minutes you should have 3 conversations. Like it is, some cultures can only be, that's not me saying we should be getting sloshed the whole time, but it's so ingrained in our culture. Like you can only really understand it. It's almost like these little pockets of utopia where it's like people will speak to someone. It's people I wouldn't speak to on a tube. Put me on in a beer garden on a Friday, I'm way more likely to have a chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a comedian called Andrew Schultz who talks about doing shows in Ireland, and he's like, there's something about walking round Ireland, and he goes, the booze it's part of their tapestry. And it's like you walk around, and pubs in Ireland I love because they play all the sort of shit, yeah. And it's like at 4 p.m. people have a couple of Guinnesses, and it's like everything wakes up, and then the music comes. And there's something so profound about pubs.
And they are so British. I mean, I've got loads of family. All my family are in France, bar my daughter, and they all, as soon as they come to visit, want to go to a pub.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's British, and that it's the fabric of life in Britain, and it's shameful that so many pubs are having to close now, and it's just dreadful when you hear that. So many pubs having to close their doors, and we're losing that identity in Britain.
How would you go about sort of saving, like, other than, like, I know government intervention is, like, that's one part of the puzzle, right? Probably quite a big piece, right?
Massive.
But, like, say there are pubs struggling who are listening to this, like, on their Instagram things we put out, the clips, right? People are like, we can't, like, we're so struggling to, like, get people in. Like, what are some of the things you think you would do to help those sort of institutes?
Well, government help, government intervention, financially, and that's not just for pubs, it's for the hospitality industry. There are many ways that they could help us, but pubs face something else, and that is the fact that booze is expensive. Younger generations are drinking less booze, and if they do want to drink booze, they will go to the supermarket and buy a 6-pack or buy a cheap bottle of vodka, drink it at home or on the way to a party, as opposed to going to a pub and having a few rounds.
Yeah.
It is a shame. It's I don't know what we can do about that. There's no single answer.
Yeah,
there really isn't.
It's the other. I've got a friend who runs quite a few nightclubs, and I was having dinner with him the other day, and he was, the nightclubs are dying even faster than pubs.
Absolutely. The nightlife is.
And it's like, well, a couple of things. It's one, social media. Like, now people don't want to go to a nightclub in case they get filmed. Because they'll, if you're doing something stupid. Like, I was in that weird period where I could go clubbing because it was like just pre-social media. One thing, but the other thing is like bottomless brunch, because now people are the girls and guys are getting so sloshed in the morning that by the time it gets to 11 o'clock to go out, it's like, I can't, it's 12 hours before you've even got into fabric. Do you know what I mean? So
it's a proper session, isn't it? Oh, God.
It is interesting how you put at these things. One thing I'd love to know, and this is what Rory Sutherland taught me, he was sat here, was like, we should use podcasts as a way to shout out like other small restaurants. I'd love to know, like, what are some of your hidden gems, like in London, or like, not necessarily favourite restaurants, but those ones that aren't particularly obvious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's one that I really enjoy in Clapham that's only been open a few years now, and that's called Ploussard.
That's opposite the Northcote pub.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little corridor of a restaurant, small restaurant.
Yeah.
And the team in there are really doing very well. I mean, I really enjoy there. I've been there 5 or 6 times, and my daughter and son-in-law as well. It's really unpretentious, well-cooked food, nothing silly, no froths and foams and flowers or anything silly like that. It's just good. Some really interesting wines as well, really nice, interesting wine list. Lovely, friendly service. I really enjoy it. And it's just got that lovely neighbourhood feel to it. And, I live 15, 20 minutes away from it, so I pop in there whenever I can. So that's really heartwarming to see as well. Yeah. To see small places like that succeed and do well. Because whenever I walk past, it's always full. So they're obviously doing really well.
Yeah.
More and more difficult for me to get a table now. But that's heartwarming. And let's not always talk about negatives and talk about, the pubs that are closing and restaurants, the hospitality industry finding it more and more difficult. Let's showcase and say there are positive stories out there. That's one of them.
Any other sort of places, hidden gems, underrated?
Not that I've been to recently. I've been to some very, very well-known big, Michelin-starred restaurants recently. I've been trying to work my way around because I've been working so damn hard at the restaurant at Gavroche over the years. I've got a lot.
Which restaurants are you going to then, or which one? What's on your sort of circuit?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of catching up to do. So I've been trying to do all the one Michelin-star restaurants in London. So I've been to Mountain recently. I've been to. I was going to say BB, but BB haven't got their Michelin star yet, which is shameful. Bloody good. Cole, I'm trying to remember. I went to Ikoi recently and it's got 2 stars.
The guy's name's escaped me. Cole, guy's coming on the podcast soon.
Yeah?
Yeah.
George, isn't it? George? I can't remember his name either. Yeah. Sorry, I'm terrible with names too. That was bloody good.
Really?
Jesus, yeah. Really, really, really good. But it's really great. And it's, that Michelin star rating, it's incredible how, and it's really good, I think, to see the different styles that they've got, all these one Michelin stars. It's not one, one size fits all. They're not going to be all the same.
Yeah, but I like, because I think, what are the different styles? Because I stylistic and I love that. I love all that stuff, how you can kind of achieve the end goal. Like the brown omelette, white omelette's the perfect way. It's the same thing, right? Yeah. What are the differences?
Yeah, because both of those omelettes were Michelin star.
Exactly. Yeah? But it's like how you get there, and I think that's where you can put your soul in your work, which I think is really, or your personality in your work is really important. So, what are some of the sort of different textures in these restaurants that you've seen?
So, I mean, if you ask the Michelin Guide, and I'm sure if they were here today, they would back me up on this. What makes a Michelin star? It's food.
Yeah.
They will say, first off, it's what's in the plate. So it has to be great ingredients, really well cooked, obviously. And what they're looking for as well is consistency. So it has to be really consistent. So if they come in on a Tuesday, it has to be exactly to the same level on the Wednesday, the following day, or whenever. And they want to see the character and the character and the soul of the owner, or there has to be real identity to the place. So a place like St. John's, for example, where they might be serving up one day a boiled ham, parsley sauce, mashed potato. That's it on the plate. But it is the best ham you can get your hands on. It is beautiful mashed potato and a parsley sauce to die for. Lump-free, has a wonderful flavour, depth of flavour of freshly chopped parsley, etc. So simple. Really, really, really pared down simplicity. But it's perfect. But you could go to another Michelin star restaurant, one Michelin star, the equivalent, same level, where you will have little flowers on the main course and it will be, 100 ingredients in there. And it totally different, yet has one Michelin star. But they are a reflection of the person that's running the restaurant. Yeah. They are a reflection of their character, and it's not one's better than the other. No, it's just 2 different styles of cooking, but are reaching the same level of same standard, as it were. It's very, very difficult to understand at times. I mean, even me as a seasoned pro.
I think a lot of it is, again, I think putting your soul in your work, in any kind of creative pursuit, is it's one of those things you can only notice it when it's not there. You have to look in reverse, right? So
as I said earlier, you walk into a restaurant and you can feel an aura. Yeah. You can feel it. Yeah. So it's exactly the same.
It's like the example is just like, for me, is Jun at the 9th, right? It's like, the 9th is his, you can feel his just mark on everything as you go in. And it's like not pretentious food at all. It's just, but it's like, he said a great thing, which is like, your favorite restaurant should transcend the menu. Yeah. And it's interesting because, again, this is what Rory was telling me. It's like when you ask someone their favourite restaurant, if you say you're on a dinner party, is most people will say they're the restaurant that gives them the most status. So they'll usually say a 3-star. It's like, how many times have you been to that restaurant? So it's like, once. And what Rory's thing is, and there's probably a sliding scale of this, is like your favourite restaurant's actually the one you go to the most. Yes. Maybe not Nando's, but but something like the Ninth or the Devonshire, where you go 4 or 5 times a year and quite happily. How did you? So when you took over Le Gavroche, in terms, let's stick on this sort of in the lanes of putting your soul in your work. So you've got this. Your dad's created this hugely successful restaurant, global kind of status. You then come in. What were sort of the unforeseen challenges in terms of building your own path, putting your soul, which isn't your dad's, into
very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very difficult, because he said, right, I'm retiring, it's all yours now, like Kelly was. He was finding it very, very difficult to let go, understandably so.
How old was he when he retired?
Oh, gosh. Late 50s, I suppose it must have been. I'm trying to figure it out. Early 60s, late 50s, okay, early 60s.
Sure.
I mean, he said retire, but he didn't. He carried on working. I suppose a bit like me now. I haven't really retired. I'm still working. But he said that he'd stopped working at the Gavroche. But he hadn't. He was always there, always present. Not in the kitchen, obviously, but he would come in for dinner. He would pop in all the time. He would be at the meetings, and he would always, have something to say.
Yeah.
So, fuck's sake, yeah.
Fuck off.
I'm in charge. I can't help it. You're doing this. You're doing that. It should be this way, that way. Oh, Jesus, it was very hard. I mean, it was fraught at times.
How did you manage him then? That's almost the bigger manager.
You couldn't.
You couldn't.
You couldn't manage my old man. No one could manage.
But it is like what? But it's mad because you did eventually over time create your own.
Yes.
But talk me through that period.
So yeah, I mean, it took a long, long time, and to be honest, the last thing I wanted to do was alienate, our loyal customer base. Because by then Gavroche was already an iconic name and an iconic destination, and had a huge following, worldwide following. So the last thing I wanted to do was take certain items off the menu and just tear it all up and start again. So out of respect for what Le Gavroche was, I had to start changing things slowly, not overnight. So putting my imprint on the menu was a very, very slow thing, and it took forever. But it wasn't just that. It was also imposing my way of working and my understanding of service as well, like the jacket rule, for example, the tie rule. I think it was the early 90s when I said to Silvano, look, I've had enough of this bloody tie rule.
So that was the rule before you to go. You had to have a tie and a
gentleman jacket and tie.
Right.
Yeah. I said, when I go out, I don't wear a tie. Let's just drop this rule, drop the tie rule. And Silvano was okay with it. But the old man, when we announced this at the meeting, he went, "You sure? What? Why the hell do you want to do that? I mean, all our guests here wear ties. They get dressed up for dinner, and it's Gavroche. It's not your little restaurant around the corner. No, calm down. No. We have to live with our times. Let's drop this tie rule. Let's go for it." So we dropped the tie rule. It wasn't the end of the world. we didn't lose any custom, and it was fine. And then a couple of years after that, I said, I think we really should drop the jacket rule as well. Oh my God. Oh Jesus.
What did he say when you said that?
I think it took...
Take me into the apex of that. What was he? Do you remember what you said?
Well, not words that I wish to say now. I mean, I know you said I could swear a bit, but this is just... No. I mean, it took me, I think, the best part of a year to finally put my foot down and say, nah, sod this. No more jackets, or no more. We can drop this jacket rule.
How did you have the confidence or build the confidence to do that?
I think after just constantly saying to him, look, we've got to do this, he relented and he said, okay, let's do it. But I mean, he was seriously worried that it would affect the business. I mean, he said, no, we can't do this. You know, the Ritz still has it. All the clubs as well still had that, you know, very, very strict rule. And a few other restaurants did as well. And I said, no, you know, wearing a jacket doesn't mean that you can, you know, that you can afford to eat at Gavroche. Doesn't mean that, you know, you're not worthy enough. You know, I said it's just wrong, absolutely wrong. And we want our guests to be comfortable. If you feel uncomfortable wearing a jacket, fine. It's about the person. It's not about what you're wearing.
Sure.
And you know, he was adamant. He says, "Oh, we're going to get the wrong people dining with us, and all our regular guests are going to be pissed off, and we're going to lose custom, and you know, this is the end of, you know, Gavroche as it, you know, as I envisaged it. You know, all of that." We went with it in the end, and I knew I'd won the argument when a few weeks later he bowled in for lunch without tie or jacket.
Hilarious.
And we did get a few sarky comments, you know, from some of our older generation loyal guests who'd say, oh, you know, getting the riff-raff in and this and that, and oh, look at that table over there. They couldn't be bothered to get dressed up. Well, that table over there probably spent twice as much as you did. Well, I didn't say that, but,
sure.
You know, yeah. So that was one of the big changes.
Were there any other big changes? Because I think reinvention is really important.
Yeah.
And
you know, going back to that, but also it was very important to bring the average age down of our guests, because when I took over in the late 80s, it was, and officially 91, but I was already in charge in the late 80s. The average age of the punters coming to Gavroche was in the high 60s.
Really?
Yeah. And they were all from a certain kind of souche, as it were. And that's bonkers. Give them another 10 years, they'll all pop their clogs or have, you know, retired to the countryside and be no longer with us.
Yeah.
So it was so important for me to bring that average age of the diner down and to refresh our customer base. So getting rid of the tie and the jacket rule was one step towards that, making it more sort of customer friendly, for want of another, you know.
Yeah. What other changes did you make?
Well, then it was the menu, slowly but surely the menu. So making the offer much lighter, a lot less cream and butter, a lot less sauces, much lighter, and the tasting menu at the time. I mean, it was huge and it was rich, and it was.
What were some of the dishes on it?
Oh gosh, I can't go. Honestly, I pressed the delete button and moved on. It was just horrendous.
Sure.
The portions were gigantic. I mean, I know people ate a lot more back then as well, but still, you want to leave a restaurant full, yes, but you don't want to leave the restaurant bloated, so much so that you just can't move.
I do quite like that thing.
Well, yeah. But you know, and just to lighten the atmosphere as well, the service as well. When I took over, and Silvano would be able to tell you as well, the rule then was the front of house didn't talk to their guests unless they were spoken to or asked a question.
Really?
It was so. Was
it quite
strict and formal? Was
it almost like when they're like, you know, sometimes they're like looking at you? You feel like you're being. It's almost like a paranoia when you're dining because you feel like they're looking at you. Was it kind of a bit like?
Yes.
Wow.
And it was a hush, and you were scared to, you know, clunk your cutlery or anything, and it was hallowed turf, and it was, you know, the temples of gastronomy. It was more like eating in a bloody morgue. It's horrible. I hate those places. And so slowly but surely, with Silvano's help, we brought a much more friendly atmosphere in the restaurant and make it more conducive to enjoyment. But that was, you know, high-end restaurants in the 60s, 70s and early 80s, which I wanted to break away from.
What were some of the changes you came up with Silvano? Like in terms of just taking that, the kind of the I don't know, the sting out of it.
Yeah, that hard edge.
Yeah, the hard edge is what it is. It's softening it.
It's communication.
Yeah.
And it is communicating with your guests and making them feel at ease because Gavroche was intimidating. If you'd never been there before, I mean, a high-end Michelin star restaurant, the whole process of it, you're going down into the basement as well, which is intimidating, in a darkened restaurant, and very, very opulent. All of that if you're not used to fine dining, and I hate that moniker, fine dining, but
Sure.
you know what I mean. And you're about to spend a lot of money. That can be very intimidating for someone who's maybe saved up a long time or has never been to that, that kind of restaurant. So the idea was to break that cycle.
Yeah.
Make people immediately as they came in, first step, massive sort of welcome, break the ice. How far have you travelled today? Or the weather's been terrible today. Or let me take you down the stairs. Or would you like a drink at the bar? Or really, really engage with your guests within the first few minutes. You've really broken that ice, it down, and then that has to continue all the way through service. So that by the time they've got the order, they know the waiter's name. The waiter knows where they come from. All of that. So it's all about training and breaking down that kind of myth that good service is all about serving from the left and cleaning from the right and putting cutlery down this way, and the glass has to be at 10 centimetres from here, and that, and all of that. It's not. No, that's not great service for me.
Yeah.
And great service is about connecting with your guests.
The one thing I wanted to ask is, so when it went from 3 stars to 2 stars, and you were kind of running the ship there, what was hard about that, specifically the relationship with your father?
Yeah.
Because I didn't, how did you, because what you're telling me, if he went ballistic about a fucking dinner jacket, then
He didn't.
But then I also think it's important because I feel like that's when you forge your own style, from what I've heard. So it's kind of it was probably the best thing to happen, but also the worst thing. I don't know. So kind of talk me through that period.
Yeah. So I mean, that was a very, very tough period. But in hindsight, I think it was 100% correct. What the guy did, they removed the third and took us down to 2, which I will always say this, and I've said it to Michelin guide inspectors, is I would rather be a happy 2 than a miserable 3. And by that, I mean exactly what I was talking about there, service-wise, where people come in and they have to hush, and they're some 3 Michelin stars are not convivial to enjoyment. It's just too highbrow for me. And I'm a chef, and I'm in the industry and all that. And there are certain 3-star restaurants where I just don't get it. It's too much. Just give me good food, for God's sake. Give me great service.
Sort of superfluous things you don't necessarily agree with, or not agree with, that just doesn't float your boat.
Endless tasting menus that go on for too long. Chefs that take themselves too seriously, for God's sake. It's food.
What, like l'artiste sort of chefs?
Yeah. It's food.
Yeah.
Chefs sometimes are too stuck up and cooking for their own egos. Come on. It's about pleasure. Dining out is about pleasure. So when it didn't affect the business at all, going down from 3 to 2. The old man was a bit upset, but he actually wasn't that much. I mean, we had a couple of words about it, but there was no ranting or raving, quite on the contrary. And I think it was the right thing. We were no longer it was no longer Dad's, so he was no longer in the kitchen. So absolutely, take it away because he's no longer there. Give me 2 stars. I'm happy with that. Very happy with it. 3-star restaurants sometimes are shackled, and by that I mean that it can
create your own prison, sort of thing. Do you think?
Yeah, it can sometimes stunt the ability to to do a bit of freestyle and to be more creative, I feel. I mean, there are many 3-star restaurants out there that you can go in several times in a year and you will eat exactly the same menu. Exactly. It becomes robotic and soulless, which Gavroche was never. And Gavroche had a soul, had an identity, had a life, and created so many fabulous memories for so many people. And you know, so that was important to me. So it was a tough time, but it wasn't actually that tough in many respects, and it was probably the best thing that happened.
It's interesting what you say. One thing I want to speak to you about is sort of stamina and like long. Yeah, go for it. Because I think, and what you're saying about almost the 3 stars being I believe like your passion can be a paradise or a prison, and by that I mean like you can work, you start off doing something you absolutely love, but then it comes this period where it becomes a real grind, and it's like you've got to keep doing, making sure you're loving it. That's one thing
Yes. But motivation is very, very tough. Self-motivation.
Right, also, yeah, because that's why I want to ask you about, because I was speaking to a guy with this podcast, right? So I was like, I love doing this, but obviously there's a lot of work behind the scenes, but that's all fine because I love doing it. And I'm like, I need to be doing 3 a week. I was like, I need to be going harder. I need to be putting out 3 a week. Yeah. And I went for lunch with a guy who's got a big, who's mates with the guy who's got a big podcast. He's putting out 3 a week. And he's like, you don't want to do that. He's committed to 3 a week, and his passions become his prison. Yeah. And it's almost like the 3-star. It's like he's got so much unhappy 3-star versus happy 2-star. He's like, mate, just do 1 a week, and also, don't always put out a big guess because then you create an expectation. And I'd love to speak to you, Michel, about longevity, because I want to be doing this. Like, I think there's a book called like The Marathon Chef or something, which you wrote. Like, what's the art of? There's a quote by Ernest Shackleton, the explorer, who was the first to go across the North or South Pole. I can't remember. It's like, by endurance we conquer. And I think there's something I love to talk to you about endurance. Like, what have you learnt about keeping the love for your work alive?
Well, I was a marathon runner, as you alluded to, and that's certainly endurance, isn't it? And I think
I'm a couch to 5K kind of cat, but slowly milking, getting a little bit faster.
I think you've got to love what you do.
Yeah.
And then it's not a chore.
Yeah.
So for me, the restaurant world, hospitality is a way of life. It's not a job. And okay, I was born into it, but I could have chosen not to, go that route. But I did, and it's, I don't see it as a job. I don't see it as a bind, as a chore. I just see it as a way of life. So you take that away, then it's easy to endure, and it's easy to just carry on. I can't see myself really stopping. I always want to be involved and in and around hospitality because I love it, and I want to, I want to inspire the next generation, and I want to help the next generation be better than me. I mean, that is the best achievement. If somebody that I've trained or somebody that I've inspired to become a chef or work in the hospitality industry achieves better than me, I've succeeded.
Yeah. Why do you think hospitality's, like, what is it you love so much about it? And like, why do you think it's good for human nature, like humans?
My God, we need hospitality.
Yeah.
We need pubs. We spoke about it earlier. We need social hubs. We are social beings. That's why I'm the onslaught of the screen, the iPad or computer screens for communicating, telephones, dating. Why?
It's mad.
It is mad to be able to talk to you.
Yeah.
To be able to maybe share a pint with you, or walk into a pub and strike up a conversation with somebody that you've never met before. That's what humans do, or are supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I that is so important. That's what hospitality can do.
Do you know Natura, the suppliers?
Yeah.
I interviewed Franco Fabini the other week.
Yeah.
He's absolute legend. And his whole thing's flavour. Like, he's got a beautiful book called In Search of the Perfect Peach, which I think is just it's a great book. And but one of the things we were talking about is, obviously, if you zoom out, like, I was like, what was the history of restaurants? When did they start? And he was saying, and he was like, I may be wrong here, but it's about 400 years ago. And the word restaurant means like rest, stop, I think. Is what
Restore.
Restore, yeah. And it's almost, I mean, we ended up talking, and it did, as I said, that fun happens off piece, but we were kind of like, the restaurant is the campfire. Like, if you're looking at like hunter-gatherers, it's where we now come together and we share and we talk. And like, he was like, they're never going to go away, because it's like, it's this human innate desire which we crave, and it's like makes us who, and also like, everything important happens around food.
Of course it does.
Like, every big business decision going on now, it'll be around food. Like, how they're going to sort out the wars, there'll be food. Like, or not, as I say, or meals. Or there's this. It's just something about that, about us that's pulled to it. And I think it's timeless. A few more things, if that's all right, and we'll wrap this up. Yeah. So you worked, didn't you? Is it the Champellier? Where did you work?
Oh, hang on, you're
the military bit.
Yeah.
Did you work for the French cook for the French president?
Yeah.
Who was the French president then?
So
What was that period like for you?
I had to do my military service, because in France it was still, you'd still get called up. This was the early 80s.
Sorry, I misinterpreted that then. So you actually did military service?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I thought you were just like, you were cooking for the military.
I did end up cooking, yes.
Right.
But I got called up to do my military service because I had dual nationality, French and English. I was already working then. And when I got called up, I said to my mum and dad, look, this is ridiculous. This is a waste of a year. I'll relinquish my French nationality. And they went, no, you can't do that. You've got to have your French nationality.
Sure.
So they persuaded me to do it. And Dad said, don't worry, I know a few people, I can pull a few strings, and I can make sure it's not a waste of a year. So off I went to the barracks, had my hair cut, learnt how to be a soldier for 3 months, marching, how to shoot a gun, and doing all the military stuff that you're supposed to learn as a soldier. And then after the 3 months was elapsed, I was called up to be a chef at the Élysée Palace.
That was it, sorry, yeah.
So at the Élysée Palace, it's basically the equivalent of number 10 Downing Street, as it were. And all the chefs there were military. So I cooked for President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing and then Mitterrand.
Say that.
And kept my French nationality.
Sure. And what did you learn from working? Like, did you have much interaction with him? Like, is there anything you picked up?
No, well, God, no. But what a place to cook! I mean, it was banqueting, but with opulence. I mean, I saw truffles served as a vegetable. I've never seen so much caviar in all my life. In fact, I've never seen it since. I mean, kilo tins of caviar, just benches and benches of it. It was just complete opulence, unbelievable opulence, and the president Valéry Giscard d'Estaing was booted out, but in French politics, the president has like 2 or 3 weeks to pack his bags and say his goodbyes.
Really?
So there was lots of partying then. But then the incoming president, Mitterrand, Socialist Party, they hadn't been in for 14 years, so they had a lot of catching up to do. So there was a lot of banqueting, and it really was.
Were you staying in like?
In barracks? No.
Yeah.
No. As a chef working at the Élysée Palace, and we were about 30 of us, young chefs. Yeah, it was huge. We were allowed to stay outside of the barracks. I mean, it was very relaxed. I mean, we were very privileged. Thank you, Dad. Great pulling of strings there that got me that.
Yeah, because that was the other thing. I was like, in the book, is your dad's beautiful ability to network. Like, what were some of the ways he could sort of? I love rainmakers and people who can just make a couple of calls. Like, why was people so drawn to him?
I mean, he had that gift. He certainly had that gift because he could speak to anybody at any level. So he could speak to the man on the street all the way up to royalty. And I think that was a gift. And he could communicate and with anybody and everybody. And that was definitely a gift that he had.
What's one truth that you believe that most chefs would disagree with you on?
There's a helicopter going past. I think it's not just about the food. It really isn't. I think most chefs get it, but some chefs still think that it's just about what they put on the plate, and it's not.
Really? And so that's when you're linked. This is the symphony of service, and because Marco says on Bourdain, everyone thinks a restaurant is this sort of food service setting. He says it's setting, service, food. Yeah.
Well, very, very quick anecdote or story. We've all been to restaurants where the food is okay. Yeah, nothing special. It's okay. But the service is shit. Yeah, I mean, really bad. They're surly, they're smelly, they're, slapdash. Yeah, and the restaurant is, maybe dirty or not kept properly. You wouldn't go back there, would you? I don't. Definitely not. But we've all been to restaurants where the food is okay, but the service is exceptional, where they look at you in the eye, where they will greet you, where they will be smiley, happy, look after you, take your money at the end of the evening and say thank you. Yeah? We all go back to those places. We all do, without a shadow of a doubt. So it's not just about the food. It really is. It's the experience, and it's how you're treated as a guest. And I say guest, not a customer, because that is the way. It's a subtle difference. You should be treated as a guest. The other thing is because you worked for at Fairlawn. I don't know, the Gazelles, isn't it, or the Casalettes.
Casalettes, and I think seeing everyone as a private guest. Yes. Versus, what's the difference between a guest and a customer? Because I think almost you guys spending time there and working for like a, were they like what were they?
So it was a private house.
Private house, but that was probably quite instrumental to the success of it because you saw every guest as a private guest.
Absolutely.
What's the difference between a guest and a customer and
so in private house, everybody dining were guests of the family. That, in my view, is how a good restaurant should portray itself. They're not
guests in your
as
house.
Guests, not customers. It's a subtle difference, and a customer is somebody that's paying. Okay, a guest is paying as well, is paying the bills. Yes, but it's just if you start thinking they are guests, they are not customers. So it changes the frame of mind. And they are guests in your house. So you look after them as your guests.
How important is to sort of surprise, do you think, in service?
Surprise as in?
As in, have you read Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Gadara, that book that's been going around?
No, I haven't.
It's about 11th Avenue, I think, in New York.
Oh, yeah.
That went from the 50th.
Yes.
How he took it from the 50th restaurant in the world, which is still bloody good, to number one, and all that journey. And I've talked about it a lot on this podcast. But one of the things he talks about is the surprise, the element of surprise. And I think that, again, listening to each table is its own sort of theatre. And I think one couple was saying, we've been to every restaurant and we've done everything in New York. They're on their engagement, anniversary. Anniversary, got there in the end. And they're like, I haven't tried a burger, I haven't tried a New York hot dog. So he goes out and they'd hired and they got someone to bring in one of these hot dogs, but they put it on like a really nice plate. It's a beautiful element of surprise. I think Osh talks about having a medicine cabinet, which is behind the scenes, again, front stage, and backstage, front stage. And it's like, if someone's a bit miffed, it's like, we'll bring out this. And it's like, how do you think about surprise when you wanted to add that kind of more mellow, mellow.
we all like surprises.
Yeah.
You know, if you can incorporate that in your service or in your menu, and yeah, of course, we all like surprises. We all like some nice surprises, not bad surprises, obviously.
Yeah. Look, let's wrap that up. I've absolutely loved that, Michelle. It's been an absolute joy. And yeah, I really wanted to get into kind of the other side of everything you've built with your family and the heritage, the business side. And I've just learnt so much. So thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
That was brilliant.
Cheers.
Right.
That's right. Flown past. Jesus.